Men's Motivation Fitness Podcast. Podcast number 3 or 4 at this point. It's moving along. And thank you so much to our guest. Our guest is a creative, an artist, and is going to speak to our 3 questions and so much more. AJ, how are you doing today?
Life is good. Yeah, it's been busy times, but life is good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, all right. AJ, we're gonna just kind of get into things, and one of the first things before we even went to our traditional 3 questions, we were kind of talking about this as we were setting up our stuff, was just I see you as one of the most naturally people I've ever met. And we've worked on many projects over a long period of time together. So I've seen you from different angles, take leadership roles and other roles, and just kind of, you're always sparking up ideas. It's just a part of your being. And so I think of this time of COVID and just like, and humanity. And I think creativity is such a strong, beautiful thing. And it seems like this is like you're a video game character that was designed for this moment in response to like how you naturally are creative. So if you were going to try and take some of that, what you've learned about being who you are, about being creative, what kind of words of wisdom, how do you do it? What's your way of, seeing and being in the world? Because you mentioned a few things already early on, and I was like, wow, those were some good layers. So yeah, tell me about how are you so creative?
Oh man, this is a question. I think that anything in life is like cultivated kind of thing. Like, so it's the piece of, I think there's always a natural inclination, but it's kind of like, anything's a muscle. You need to kind of like work at it to kind of develop it. I think for me, creativity, like I think when I was a kid, creativity was like my mental escape, because I think when you're queer, like there's a part of you that just knows you don't kind of totally fit into the world. So you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna just like do my own thing, right? So I think that it's probably, there's a piece of it that probably, originated that to a certain degree. But like especially like as I've gotten older, I just find it's like that you have to do those things that feed your spirit, whether it's like meditation, creativity, and all those things I think do it certain ways in their own regard. And so everyone has their own values of like, what feeds their soul. So for me, it's like that piece of creativity just allows me to experience kind of like that flow energy where you kind of like lose track of time. And that's, I think, when you're on the right path, like the universe, whatever, it's like that kind of piece of like, you just kind of like lose time because it's so, you're kind of just into it, you know what I mean? And so that's the thing of everyone's thing looks different and can manifest in different ways.
Flow energy, yeah. Keep thinking about that. I think there's something magical about what you've mentioned there.
Yeah, and like for me too, I think that like one of the purposeful decisions I tried to make to kind of cultivate creativity, and limited success in some ways, but like was just getting rid of a TV, because it was just like, I knew, and because in some ways you supplement that more with like other screen time, like your phone, which is why
you got rid of your television. You don't have a television at your house.
Yeah, so what it does impact, but not having a TV, is the binge watches. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and for whatever reason, I just don't really enjoy like Netflix through my computer. There's I don't know what it is about it, but just doesn't. So then I'm just kind of bored. So you're like, okay, well and I think boredom definitely cultivates creativity, because your mind just starts kind of wondering and entertaining an idea, or thought kind of comes to you and that kind of thing. So like for me, I think part of creativity too is it changes forms. So like even though like I started a lot of my creativity off in probably like, I guess like acting in grade 12, that kind of jazz, but like it kind of shifted into like doing like more kind of canvas art. Oh, show you behind them now.
Oh.
And but then it shifted to like when I took a course actually on art, the thing I really thought about was like the environmental impact of art, like as you're just like washing your brushes down the train. Just like, I'm like, this is really trash. So I tried to like I think in that it's like this is kind of a side tangent, but like sometimes when you get exposed to like a truth, you just can't even ignore it, even when you try to. An example I give of that is like when I was in residence life, I remember someone said, we were talking about inclusive language session, and someone had said like, well, I don't like it when people say the rule of thumb, because that came from like women hitting someone with like a stick thicker than your thumb. And I was like, I'm currently trying to get jocks here to use like not faggot. So not to say that we're not gonna get there, but like I just think there are bigger fish to fry at this exact moment. But it stuck with me, it got in my head, and it just totally fell in my vocabulary. Even though I was kind of at the time thinking like, well, maybe it's a bit overboard or blah. It's like, well, if that is disrespectful to the history of women, then I don't want to engage in that behavior. So I think that piece of sometimes things you can't ignore, that really shifted me towards like digital art and getting into like things where there is no really the same level, like you have the device anyways, I guess it's, and
Right.
then, often semantics of it, but like e-waste and that kind of thing, but it's like, well, I do have the phone anyway. So that piece I think shifted me towards that a bit. And then lately, like just any kind of digital editing stuff, like getting to create like the little mini skits, that's been kind of where my creativity is now kind of flowing. So it circles back to other things and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, that's the
Oh, I
very
think your
long.
skits are really funny. So then, the first question with the Men's Motivation Fitness podcast is, what lived health experience, or what do you do in your life that you find helps you be healthy or just live a well life? And when I already think of you, I think of being creative. That's kind of why I wanted to start there, because it was just such, I really feel like I've already been touched by you by working with you for so long, about how you just roll in. The idea is where I was seeing the other day, when you have a big sheet of blank paper in front of you and you have an idea and you have a pen and you go to write in a big piece of paper, it is scary. It is scary. And you don't really know what you're doing. And for some reason, you don't seem scared in that moment. What's happening for you in that moment?
So weird that you asked that question, because I was actually very strange you asked that question, because I was actually on the seawall yesterday thinking about something very kind of like this. I was thinking about the difference of when you create to achieve. I don't know what the right word would be, but like it's almost like it's like the pressure to internally feel successful. Like it's like that this has to be good art, or that this has to make money. It's like that creates a very difficult pressure to move forward from. But when you're like, and so that's why like I've always considered too, like the way you experience your art is like when you, like let's say you do graphic design and you're working for a company, like it's like for some people that kind of, I've known, like it kind of killed their creativity, because it was always kind of creativity on demand with a very output product, and it's subject to criticism, and like you're never going to make everyone happy, because their taste could be so different than your own, right? And potentially even terrible. Whatever, you still have to negotiate it.
It's like 7-8 billion people in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. And so that notion,
one third idea and stuff like that.
exactly, yeah, like 30. Yeah, kudos to my mom for a great quote that she gave me growing up, which is like 30% will love you, 30% will hate you, and 30% don't care either way. So as long as you're not batting like outrageous numbers, like you're always gonna have a critic, right? But that notion of like when that critique is attached to your ability to pay your rent, and that you overvalue that perspective then, because it has such a big impact on your life. And so I think that that's sometimes like for the there's going to be times where like I think like even you can design a really creative process, like even in administrative work, right? Because it's like who's at the table, who's not at the table, who's represented. Like you can think really critically about it, right? Like in different dimensions. But I think it's important to cultivate some kind of part in your life that's just for you. Like it's not subject to critiques, reviews. It's just your little kind of domain of creativity that you enjoy being in, that you experience flow state. And then it's that I think also like calms you down a bit or whatever. So it also allows creativity to kind of bleed into other domains.
If someone had never heard of the word flow state before, and you were explaining it to a person in grade 1 or grade 2, how would you explain flow state to someone in, at that level, a 5-year-old?
my God, yeah, I was gonna say, I hope this isn't, okay, maybe bring me down if you need to, but it's like your relationship to time. Like when you're in flow state, you just don't even notice time. You're just having fun, it's enjoyable. And so like, oh, it's been like 3 hours. But like when it's in that kind of like, when you're not in a flow state, you notice the minutes, you notice the hours. And so that's usually in that kind of state, it's can some kind of like pressure to the work or some kind of, opinion to the work rather. And so it's like that notion, the difference of like when you're in flow state, you're in play, and when you're not in that, you're not, like you're in work mode more. Like you're trying to use that creative force for work purposes or something. That's not just fun.
Yep.
Work.
I thought that was really great. Yeah, really good. And it's a complicated point, but something beautiful. Now, before we kind of continue on with some of our games we have for you, of question number 2, any other final thoughts on your lived wellness experience and navigating that?
You know what? So yeah, I when you kind of let me know that could be like one of the questions. One of the things I was thinking about, I'd first gone to like just I guess physical, but then I was thinking about like physical health, and then like, and it's funny we talked about that a little bit earlier, but also like the intersections with mental health and the mind-body connection and how those are so integrated. And like in terms of like a health story to share with the group, I guess it's like when I grew up, I didn't know a lot about, I'd say, food. Like it's just kind of like food was food, you're like, oh, it's pizza, it's, make sure it has vegetables kind of thing. And so when I moved to Vancouver, like I had a huge, like I dropped like 60 pounds because it was multifaceted. Like some of it was becoming, like one of my friends, Darren, like he's a nutritionist, so learning about nutrition, like that was, I think that something we don't often get taught in life, and there's just such a huge impact on our life, like on the brain, mood, all of it, that it's really important to actually have nutrition education, nutrition literacy. And I think that then another component to weight is that kind of emotional side of it, like why are you eating? And I was listening to this one podcast and talking about, I was talking about kind of like trauma and how like there's we can sometimes intercept trauma rather than fully experiencing trauma. There's this researcher, and he was trying to understand like why some animals like will see like a loved one eaten in front of them like by an alligator, then be fine, and then like for humans, like why is it that they get stuck sometimes, in terms of processing trauma or change. And it was that kind of piece about the importance of just like actually feeling emotions. And so I was thinking, like, I think that's the understanding your relationship to food even. So it's like, am I eating because I'm bored? Am I eating because I'm lonely? Am I eating because I'm irritated? And so food is always such a quick fix to an emotional state. Like it takes you to a better place of, feeling. You're like, oh, that's lovely. And so the piece about really kind of taking an emotional inventory, like, and dealing with your past, like the things that kind of are, because like, and two, understanding what the role the weight is playing in your life. So like for me, when I was closeted, when I was heavy, I didn't have to be sexual. No one was questioning why I wasn't being a sexual being, right? And it's like, but then when you start, and like a really powerful moment for me too, overshare maybe, but oh well, is like I hooked up with this guy, and it was one of the first times I'd ever hooked up with someone where I like didn't actually know him. Like it was completely random. He had no idea who I was previously, and I was like, oh, he was just like into me from my body, like, and that for whatever reason was like a really powerful moment. And I just remember looking in the weight, like in the mirror naked, and being like, you know what, the weight has served its purpose. Like I'm ready to really engage more, and the how it has served me in the past is not serving my future. So this is where we part ways a bit. So that, and then like the weight also really started falling off. So I think that sometimes weight will even stick, even when we're doing the right things, because there's this other component to our body that is being served in some way. And so I think that piece about, so kind of just bringing that all together is the, having that kind of nutritional literacy, and also doing the emotional work and understanding your relationship to food. And then, because it's that 80-20 rule, 80% is like so much what you eat, and 20% is like your workout and that kind of component. You can't eat yourself. You can't work out a bad diet. Like it's very difficult. That'd be very difficult. So that's the importance of understanding what foods you're eating and why you're eating them. Sorry if these answers are super long-winded sometimes.
What a beautiful story to explain such a difficult path. When you think about, that's what so many people who are overweight are going through to a certain degree, which is just not really having a good relationship with food, and then how did you get a good relationship with food? A lot of soul searching. It sounded like mindfulness and understanding where your feelings were coming from, and then being aware of the the sciencey nutritional side of it. Super important.
Yeah, even how to read labels.
Yeah, it's super. Just knowing that stuff. Yeah, like I've studied it for like a period of time where now I can basically just tell you, yes, what my calories are within like 100 calories of the day of what I've eaten. It's just, you kind of just generally memorize what a chicken breast for calories is and what an egg is. And then when it's something really bad like McDonald's, you're like, okay, well that's probably like 1,500 calories.
That's probably a lot.
It's probably so much. So we'll go there, and now for the rest of the day we'll do something else, or we'll be aware that for the rest of the week we should be mindful that on Sunday that this many calories, and that's okay. Yeah, that's so great.
Another piece for me too was understanding when I'm tasty or when I'm hungry. Like it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, I really want something to eat, and I'm like, actually no, I just want flavor in my mouth. Like I can feel that my stomach's not growling. I can feel that I'm actually not hungry, and so that's why I like understanding. Like even like again is like, okay, well when I'm tasty, what are the things that I can enjoy that work for that? Whether it's like gum, kefir, like whatever, things that are like lower calorie but still hit that itch kind of situation. So I think that it's not just like one thing. It's really kind of like taking an interest in your health in a multifaceted way.
Well, thank you so much, AJ the Creative. Now we've got a game for you, and this one's actually fairly difficult. Let's, I'll go for the intro.
Yeah.
Okay, so this game's called Know Your Apocalypse. I'm going to play you a trailer from a 1990s apocalypse Hollywood blockbuster movie, and you're going to tell me what movie that's from. And this is to remind us we've seen some pretty gnarly apocalypses in the movies. This COVID thing's got nothing on us. We've been through this. We've got a lot of good training. So let's see how your training is. A 1990s apocalypse movie.
Okay. I had a TV at that time, so I should hopefully know this.
Subject to prosecution.
Pulling out my Shazam.
I know, right?
His name was John Mason, British national, incarcerated on Alcatraz in 1962. Stated 60 British. There's no identity in the United States or Greenland. He does not exist. Secrets have a way of coming back to haunt you. There's a hostage situation on Alcatraz. Also, tourist. The rogues, a tourist attraction.
Is that the movie they break back into Alcatraz?
A battery of VX gas run.
I think I've seen that. The name? No clue. But let me guess who was even in it if I can remember. There's certain scenes come to mind, but like, yeah, I can't even think of what the title would be. Sorry. Hot mess.
I'm an agent with the FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed.
But of course you are. At least he got his name right.
Those were two of the actors in it. The bad guys, we all know them.
Is a man who's never seen combat. A chemical freak.
I'm a chemical super freak, actually.
And another who's been out of action 30 years. Show us on the blueprints. I can't. I was in my head. Fortunately, something you'll never forget. But don't worry. It won't come back.
Mario Brothers? I have no idea. P.S. I love that cheesy bad 90s movie, whatever.
I know, right? This is
Okay.
with Sean Connery and
The Rock!
Age. And it's those green things that explode and all this fog goes up in the air and kills people.
Okay, yeah.
It's a tough
Action
one.
movies, not amazing. Now, ask me like camp classics. I'm all over it.
That is a tough one. I going in, I was like, I'm not sure if he's going to get this one. It's super tough.
It's super tough. So yeah.
The idea there is also going into question number 2, which is what have you learned from this quarantine and COVID and now flattening the curve? We've talked about creativity and how important that is, and I'm sure that's an element of what you've learned, but what else have you learned? We've all learned, it seems a lot. What would you say you've learned?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that like I had kind of someone that was I really valued in a relationship kind of come to an end, and I've got a lot of touch through that relationship. And so I think one of the things that this whole COVID thing has taught me is like how important physical touch is, you know, to our wellness. And another thing it's kind of taught me is also like how important, because the clustering kind of thing that's happening right now is kind of like, oh, just hang out with like your top, you know, 5, 10 people, whatever like that, right? And then they stay in, or everyone just stays in the groups. And like how important actually some of your like your B, C, D level connections are, like even micro connections with just like, you know, people you see at the coffee store, you know, like that kind of thing, you regularly just have a little bit of chit chat with, that all of those kind of contribute to your wellness. And I think the other thing that's been interesting, it was fascinating to me how like everyone kind of clamped down to like me versus you situation of like, buy all the toilet paper, like, because I was thinking like, you know what, like that, like we're creating our own trauma. Like it's like by everyone just buying at the same time, that's actually now actually creating a shortage. The fear that we had of there being a shortage, we actually created it. It like would have never existed. We literally are the authors of our own demise. And so that piece about like, you know what, the only way the world is ever going to get through like a horrific pandemic with like many dead is like coming together. Like how can, you know, what does your country need? What do we got? How do we sort this out? And the hard part is that I think our world is led by so many power hungry people. And I think power hungry people just naturally are kind of more narcissistic, more, you know, me, I'll be fine. So the hard part is that some people sometimes that you most need in a leadership position to like share, communicate. It's like not totally their bag, you know? And so like that calls on us, like as citizens, you know, it's like, how do we navigate that framework, and how do we come together if it's not happening on a kind of like leadership level? And because it doesn't preclude us from organizing, it doesn't preclude us from sharing or helping. And I think that seeing the micro helps of like, oh, you know, like people post in the elevator, if you need something, let me know. To like there's Vancouver, I think, well, it's like Vancouver, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a group of like what do you need, like basically Vancouver.
Oh.
And so they are, you know, if someone needs errands, they need help, they need groceries, whatever. So like just seeing people offer what they have, or, you know, be okay with requesting, like both of those. So I think that those are the kind of things that gave me in some ways both hope for humanity, and also saw like, oh, so if it does end, it's probably on us. You know, it's like, because we have enough intelligence, resources, connections. There's trillions of dollars in the world, but only billions of people. So it's like, there's enough money to figure out anything. You know, it's like, it's an artificial scarcity that we're operating under.
And so you really learned that it's more than ever we need to come together, and more than ever that means individually, that's our call. Now is our call to action to actually do something about coming together. Not only is it just a feeling, yeah, we need to come together, but you need to do something about coming together because it's that serious. Not only because it's that serious, but because the other side of it is naturally a lot of people are buying all the toilet paper. So we're already in this like diagram of we have so many people buying toilet paper or being scared that you have to actively engage in doing something that pushes us together, or else that part will ruin us.
And I think it's a micro offloading of like, well, I'll just buy some extra toilet paper because everyone else is. And it's like, then it's like, but it's just times a million people, you know? So it's that piece of like, we can't expect from others what we don't give of ourselves. And so we have to be really kind of mindful of giving of ourselves, especially in times of need, I think. And yeah, it's my final answer.
I love that. And that leads us to our third bit. And I'll let this intro kind of get us going here.
Family, friendship, struggle, testing yourself, learning, all those things are imperative. A giant part of being.
So, in this time of uncertainty, we really need to remember what is so great about being alive. So much changed all of a sudden and still is changing for us. And we seem to need to remember now more than ever the simple, beautiful, amazing, awesome things about being alive and being human. So what would you say to the stranger walking down the road or anyone that really needs to hear what is so great about being alive?
Well, I think of this, I don't know why this is coming to mind, but like it's one of my best friends, Alexis, we were talking about like what's it called again when it's kind of like, oh, nothing matters? What's that philosophical orientation of like nothing mattering? There's a term for it, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, you know, you got like detachment or this dogma or a certain kind of karma of like, you know, just to live and let.
Kind of like, yeah, I can't remember the term, but it was kind of like the idea is like, well,
and existentialism, like you just
it's like that, like yeah, it's like that. It's like it's in the vein of existentialism, but it's that like really focused on like nothing mattering. I can't remember the term.
Like humanist, like so then you should just you know, care about humans.
Well, I was thinking like the inverse of that could also be true then. Like it's like if nothing matters, well then why not enjoy and have fun? You know what I mean? Because it's not going to matter. So it's like, and actually in some ways you could see it as really limiting or really freeing, and that's the difference of your perspective. And I think that for me, it's like the joy of, the thing that I've somewhat missed because of COVID is like laughter and getting together in groups, you know, kind of thing. But it also made me cherish it more. Like I was just at Main Island this weekend with some friends and like getting to like laugh and just like those deep belly laughs. I was just like, oh yeah, this is like living, you know, this is the point and joy where for me, a huge piece of joy comes. I think it's my thing I love the most in the world is laughter. And like when it's from such an authentically, you know, belly laugh kind of thing. So cultivating the relationship to give you that and getting to spend time with the people that elevate you in that way. So yeah, that'd be mine. What's yours, by the way?
Oh, I would say flow state, creativity, and certainly, you know, hope, peace. But a lot of it lately has been find that flow state, find that thing that, and a lot of the time it was something that you liked when you were younger, or you were naturally, but you told yourself you didn't like it, or you didn't really lean into it that much. Or you just, and life could be just like, it was just a magical thought. You didn't even do it very much, but it's this magical thought you had. And when you noticed that when you were younger, or when it happened, and lean into that, you know, it's kind of fun. And then human connection. It's pretty amazing when people come together, it's pretty amazing what we can do. It's pretty freaking cool. It's definitely worth sticking around for.
And I just remember the word nihilism.
Oh, that is you're right. And I love that you were like such an academic, because you were like so spot on. I think that is an offshoot of existentialism.
It's in the family.
Exactly. If you were like a librarian or something, like first go to existentialism, then continue.
Figure it out. Yeah, totally. Amazing. So is there any more of the, what's it called? The video pop quiz? I hope I get
That's
one
right. Our final question is this, let's see here. It's just a call to action. This idea of like, if you're going to summarize, you know, what you were talking about today, or if you were going to have a call to action to people listening. And I certainly heard some calls to action in some of what you were saying. But what would you say in your kind of a summary call to action type of thoughts as you were wrapping up for today's podcast?
I think, yeah, some of the things that kind of come to mind is like create, connect as kind of calls to action coming out of this conversation for myself and hopefully for other people. I think another thing is like just the stuff that you're doing, right? Like in terms of the men's motivational fitness stuff, is that's like a call to action is to, especially in times of COVID where we're kind of like working from home and can just be like, you know, grazing, is that, you know, that kind of balance of that. And something I told you about today is like for anyone who's like kind of thinking about like, well, you know, what's the starting place for a call to action? Not really sure of like what process I would use to even figure that out. Coach McBear is this kind of positivity guy. And he has this kind of group where it's like, I think it's an empowerment group, and people, it's to help people kind of articulate their goals. That's if anyone's looking for a starting point, that could be another kind of call to action as a place to help figure out your starting place.
Love that, Coach McBear. I'm going to check it out after this.
And,
Right on. Well, thank you so much, AJ, the creative. We'll say goodbye to our viewers. Stick around. You know, let's say goodbye to each other. But thank you again for joining us for the podcast. And you had so many good words of wisdom. I can imagine I'm going to, the whole podcast will be available on Men's Motivation Fitness, Instagram and other places, but I'll probably do even a lot of small clips as well, because there was several moments where I was like, that's what I'm talking about. When I think of one of the most creative people I've worked with, it's you. When I think about that moment where you have the white canvas in front of you and you've got your pen in your hand, and you've got all of a sudden all this anxiety and just something all of a sudden stops you from creating. And yet you did everything you could. You got the white canvas in front of you. You got your pen, like you're ready to go. You've been thinking about this for months or years. You're excited. You have that moment, and then you're like, and there's that. And for you, you articulated it well. How do you, what are you tapping into to not go where many people do with that anxiety and with that space? So I can't wait to keep highlighting those ideas. Thank you again so much, AJ the Creative.
Hi, everyone who's watching.